We're here with Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, for Time Magazine's 10 Questions. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Do you believe that President Bush has harmed the reputation and image of the U.S. and the rest of the world?
I do believe that President Bush has harmed the U.S. image. Our reputation is the lowest that it has been in my memory, and it is as a result of the bad policies and primarily the war in Iraq.
As a woman, tell us, what do you think about Hillary Clinton being president?
I think Hillary Clinton is the best candidate that we have to be president of the United States because of her judgment, her experience, her desire to change the image of the United States and to change American policies so that we are once again respected throughout the world.
Did you ever feel that you had to make a decision that risked your credibility or your feeling as a supporter of human rights? And how did you deal with that?
You've raised a very important question, because the hardest part when you have the kind of power that a president or a secretary of state has is how do you decide where you're going to act and under what circumstances do you commit Americans to do something. I think I was UN ambassador at the time of Rwanda, but I wish that we had been able to do more at that time. I feel more that I was able actually to be a part of a decision to save a lot of lives in Kosovo, where in order to stop the ethnic cleansing of the Kosovars by the Serbs, we were able to use military force. But the question was whether you would lose people in the course of saving others. And I think that is one of the really hard decisions. But I think Kosovo came out well.
What are your thoughts on the current immigration debate?
I'm very troubled by it. I do think that this country has been enriched by immigrants, and this country is composed of people who come from somewhere else. We spent the war in England, and my father used to make this statement all the time, and he said, when we came to England during the war, people would say, your country has been taken over by a terrible dictator. What can we do to help you? You're welcome here. And when are you going home? And when we came to the United States after the communists had taken over, people would say, your country's been taken over by a terrible system. You're welcome here. What can we do to help you? And when will you become a citizen? And that, for my father, showed the great generosity of the American people. And I am a beneficiary of the generosity of the American people, and I hope that we can have some comprehensive immigration legislation that allows this country to continue to be enriched by those who were not born here.
What's harder, dealing with foreign policy or being a good mother to your children?
Well, I have to tell you that dealing with children and all the things that I learned raising children was very good training for dealing with foreign policy.
Rumor is that you can leg press 400 pounds. Is that true?
Absolutely. I don't know to what end, but I can do it, and I do it on a fairly regular basis.
That's extraordinary.
Well, it's my legs that are strong. I'm not so good in the bench press.
What do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment as Secretary of State?
I think, we talked about this a little bit, I think it was Kosovo, because when I was ambassador to the United Nations, we were dealing with Bosnia, and I felt that it had taken us too long to get into really helping in Bosnia. And so when I was Secretary of State and I saw what was going on in Kosovo, and I went to the refugee camps and I met with a lot of Kosovars, I thought that it would be very important to use what we could through NATO to save those lives. And so it was not easy. I had arguments within our own government. Fortunately, President Clinton believed we should do something about it. And then we had a lot of discussions with our allies about this, and the Russians did not want us to do this, so that's why we went to NATO rather than through the United Nations. But after it was over, I went to Pristina, the capital of Kosovo, and there were huge crowds of people that had signs over saying, "Thank you, USA," and "Thank you, President Clinton." And I'm just thrilled that now, if you go to Kosovo, there's a whole generation of little girls whose first name is Madeleine.
What advice do you have for women in positions of authority who are trying to seek respect from their male counterparts?
I have often sat in meetings and thought, I want to make that statement, but my goodness, it's going to sound stupid. And then some man makes the statement, and everybody thinks it's brilliant. And so my advice has been that women have to be active listeners and interrupt. But when you interrupt, you have to know what you're talking about. The other part is, I think it's important not to be angry. State your arguments strongly, passionately, but know what you're talking about.
How do you think the Bush administration will be judged decades after when he leaves office?
Well, I think it's going to be judged as a failure, which I think is sad. We have lost the respect of a number of countries. I think that as brilliant as our military is, and I think we owe them all a debt of gratitude, our military strength is more questioned now than it was before. And I think that many of the conflicts, the regional conflicts that are out there, have not been resolved. And our economy does not look particularly good as we go into 2008. I think that obviously history takes a long time to be assessed. But as of now, I would say that this is a presidency that has not worked, and that has also done great damage to certain aspects of our Constitution. And so I'm very worried, and I'm glad that this presidency will end. But we have another year, and the reason that I wrote my book as a memo to the next president is because the next president is going to have a very hard job trying to rebuild our reputation, restore our leadership, and make sure that the American people are safe.